Happening. Thanks for joining me as always on this Thursday morning. It is much appreciated. Let's start with a quick note here before we get into the Patriots swinging big for talent. Let's talk about Kyle Dugger for a second in the safety market. You go back to the other night, we did the breaking news podcast, and I had mentioned that I thought it was smart business by the Patriots. Said it was smart business by the Patriots because the safety market was going to be a very depressed market. And $13 million, which was the AAV that was put on the table for Dugger before they put the transition tag on him, I thought it was a very fair offer. Thought it was fair money to offer Dugger for what he does. And now you look at this. Now you look at this and you say to yourself, wait a minute. Okay. Justin Simmons, released. Jordan Poyer, released. Kevin Byard, released. Jamal Adams, released. Quandre Diggs, released. That's just 5 names. You look at the safety market right now, we are talking about a plethora of talent being released throughout the league and a lot of talent that was already going to be available to teams via free agency. Nick Cordy, salary analyst, posted this morning. The total 2024 salary shed now at safety has crossed 9 figures. $103.25 million has been shed at the safety position already. Cordy writes, I don't know if I can ever remember any single position in any other season that suffered this much cutting. There's roughly 57 safeties available right now in free agency. And that is why the Patriots offered Dugger $13 million a year, long term. And that's why they put that transition tag on him the other day. Because there's just too many safeties that are going to be available to lead you to overpay Dugger by a dramatic amount. If anybody was talking about, the Patriots are being cheap with Dugger. No, they weren't being cheap with Dugger. They were being smart with Dugger. Again, we talked about this on the Breaking News podcast the other night. I just want to highlight the depressed market that safety is. There are tons and tons of safeties that are going to be available. And I think Kyle Dugger is either delusional about his own value, which can happen, or he's getting bad advice. One of those two things. Because right now, I'm not sure Duggar's going to be offered anything more than $13 million on the open market, and that might be a little bit too much money. He might be offered like $12 million on a long-term deal. So I think Dugger thought he was going to get a lot more money, either because it's in his own head he was going to, or the advice he got wasn't good advice. The Patriots, to me right now, I would tell you, it feels like that they pretty much nailed Dugger's value on the open market. We'll see how it works out. Let's move on. Lots of holes to fill for this football team. And we didn't know what to expect, and we still don't know what to expect from Eliot Wolf and company, how they're going to handle free agency. Would they sign a bunch of mid-tier free agents? Would they go out for big names? What were the expectations? We know they have a lot of money that they can spend. We've talked about the salary cap floor and all of those things. But what would they do? Who would they be calling? Who would they be chasing? And through various reports over the last few days, it certainly seems like the Patriots are swinging big on talent. They're taking home run hacks. You go back to Andrew Callahan and Doug Kyed from the Herald last weekend post-combine, and they wrote that the Patriots would be targeting at least one elite defender that would immediately start for Gerard Mayo. Elite defender. Then we had more notes over the past couple of days. Tyler Dragon, by the way, that name kicks ass, on the Patriots' interest in L'Jarius Sneed, cornerback from the Chiefs. This was on CBS. A person with direct knowledge of the situation told USA Today Sports that the Minnesota Vikings, Colts, Titans, Patriots, Lions, Falcons, Jags have expressed interest in the Chiefs cornerback. Sneed had the non-exclusive franchise tag placed on him earlier this week. Now, SI Now wrote that to trade for Sneed, it would cost a second-round pick and a contract north of $20 million per year. Mark Daniels at Mass Live somewhat tapped the brakes. I don't know if he pumped the brakes in full, but he gave it a little tappy. He wrote, according to a source, the Patriots did inquire about Snead, but that interest was described as the team doing due diligence on the player. At this point, it doesn't seem that the Patriots' level of interest in Snead is serious. It would be a surprise if they were to give up vital draft compensation. All right, so I take from Daniels that the Patriots likely inquired about Snead before the non-exclusive franchise tag was placed on him. Because Daniels goes back and he says that this is having to do with draft compensation. Didn't necessarily have to do with money, right? So I'd imagine the Patriots called the Chiefs wondering what was going to happen with Snead. How are you guys going to handle him? You're going to franchise him? You're going to put another tag on him? What kind of compensation are you looking for? And the Patriots had that conversation, but once the Patriots got a true gauge of what the Chiefs wanted in return with the draft capital, the Patriots could be considered not so serious on Snead, which makes sense. We've talked about this. The idea that the Patriots, they're not in a position right now, I don't think, to pay a bunch of money for a free agent and give up draft capital. I love T. Higgins. Higgins would have been my number one target in free agency as far as wide receiver goes. But the moment he was franchise tagged, I'm out. Because now you got to give up some significant compensation for Higgins, draft capital-wise, and pay that guy. And I don't think with all of the holes the Patriots have right now, I don't think it's good business. I don't think it's smart business to give up picks and pay top-of-the-line money to really anybody at this point. I'm not giving picks and big money up. I'm just not. It doesn't make much sense to me. So I read Mark Daniels' story as the draft compensation being the issue in these Snead talks. But the very fact that the Patriots are inquiring, the very fact that they're kicking the tires, so to speak, on somebody like L'Jarius Snead, I think tells us what they're looking for. I think it clearly tells us that the Patriots, they're big game hunting. They're looking for elite talent. They're looking for guys who could have an impact and change games. They're willing to spend big money. You don't call the Chiefs. We just talked about how the Patriots, I think, pretty much nailed the Duggar value, right? You don't even pick up the phone. You don't pick up the phone and call the Chiefs and ask about L'Jarius Snead unless you're ready to back up the Brinks truck. Eliot Wolf knows how much money Snead's going to cost. They've been doing all of these cost evaluations for months. You're not picking up the phone. You're not wasting your time. You're not wasting your time to make that phone call on somebody who's going to make $20 to $22 million per year unless you're ready to pay that guy $20 to $22 million a year. All right, I have a lot of thoughts, a lot more thoughts on the Patriots swinging big coming up. But first, let's talk about our sponsor. Nick Cattle Show is brought to you by First Class Glazing. Elevate your bathroom experience with First Class Glazing, where they specialize in luxurious bathroom renovations and bathtub glazing. If you're looking to get your bathroom renovated, check these guys out. Expert craftsmen dedicated to delivering top-tier results using premium materials and precise techniques to create a space that exudes sophistication and charm. You can go online, firstclassglazing.com, or you can give my guy Jose a call at 617-849-0513. That's 617-849-0513. And people ask, how can I support the pod? There's a couple of ways. You can give us that like, the thumbs up, right? We always talk about that, beating up the algorithm. You can give us that like on YouTube. More likes means more eyeballs, drive the traffic. You can comment. You could also subscribe. We're about 70 or so away subscriptions to our goal next week of 2,250. Can we hit that 2,250? You can help us by subscribing. Another way that you can help the podcast, though, is by checking out the sponsor. This is our first sponsor in the history of this program. If you need bathroom renovation, if you know somebody who needs a bathroom renovation, check out First Class Glazing. You can get a free estimate and 10% off when you mention this podcast. All right, back to the Patriots swinging big. We're not only talking about L'Jarius Snead in that report, right? We're also talking about Baker Mayfield. who reportedly the Patriots were interested in. We talked to Jeff Howe about that yesterday. You can check it out on the pod. They were also interested in Mike Evans. There are reports that the Patriots are interested in Saquon Barkley. Now, let me make this clear. This is not a referendum on any of those players. We're not talking about, do you like Baker Mayfield? We're not talking about, do you like Mike Evans? Or do you like Saquon Barkley? The point of this podcast is to underline, to put in bold, to highlight the idea that the Patriots are looking at top-tier free agents. Baker Mayfield is QB number 2 in free agency, right underneath Kirk Cousins. Mike Evans could be seen as the top available wide receiver before he signed the extension with Tampa. Saquon Barkley is seen as the top guy in the running back market. So the Patriots were interested in the top corner in L'Jarius Sneed. They were interested in the second quarterback in Baker Mayfield in free agency. They were interested in the best receiver free agent that was going to be out there in Mike Evans. They're interested in the top running back in Saquon Barkley. These are top names, folks. This isn't bottom of the barrel. We're calling a bunch of mid-tier cats. We're looking for deals that make sense. We're not looking for the Ezekiel Elliott's. We're looking at the Saquon Barkleys. We're not looking at the Nelson Aguilars. We're looking at the Mike Evanses. We're looking at Baker Mayfield. And at the third pick, we hear the Patriots want to draft a quarterback. That would be a big swing. If they took a swing at the quarterback at number 3, you're taking that swing because you believe in the value of the ceiling that quarterback has. You're projecting somebody like Drake May or Jaden Daniels to be a true stud at quarterback at the NFL level. These are big swings. So a few takeaways. Number 1, the Patriots are ready to spend on top talent. They're looking at top talent. They're discussing top talent. They're making phone calls about top talent. That's what they're doing, which tells me they are at least ready to spend for top-of-the-market guys. Number 2, Eliot Wolf in this front office, they have a different appreciation for the quarterback position and the wide receiver position. The number 1 priority, reportedly, for the Patriots this offseason in free agency is to land a wide receiver 1. That's their number 1 priority. Number 1. Uno. When have we heard that in prior years? Like never. Like never. And they've needed a wide receiver 1 for how long? It feels like forever. And when we look at quarterback, they're looking at Mayfield, right? They were interested in him. They want to draft a quarterback at number 3, reportedly. So again, it's the idea of appreciating and respecting the quarterback position and the wide receiver position. And that's great news to me, because if you're looking at the 2024 rendition of the NFL, you're looking at a league where you need some offense. Offense is down. It's even more vital now to try to find that offense. And so when you have a front office that is digging and turning over stones and talking about the top quarterback or top 2 quarterback in free agency, talking about drafting a quarterback at number 3, talking about going after a true legitimate wide receiver number 1, you're talking about a front office that is focused on this offense and the idea that, hey, getting a quarterback and getting a top wide receiver is pretty smart business. And they're also trying to protect some of them picks. So the Patriots want to spend. The question is, will they be able to? Will they be able to execute this plan? We'll get to that in a minute. Don't forget, a lot of you watching, if you enjoy the podcast, give us that like. Thumbs up means a lot. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter/X. More likes means more eyeballs. Trying to hit 2,250 subscriptions by next week. We're about 70 to 80 away from that. Help us out. Help us reach that goal by subscribing to this channel. Rate and review Spotify, Apple Pods. And I also got to tell you this. exclusive content, Patreon page starts on Monday. Monday night, I am going to do a special ad-free podcast on Monday night looking at some of the deals that have been signed in the NFL or agreed upon. The tampering period is on Monday. We will do a free agency ad-free. It's a lot of free on that Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Nick Cattle. Sign up right now. $5 a month. That ain't free, but it's $1.25 a week. And you'll get at least one ad-free podcast every week exclusively. You'll get a mailbag that is exclusive to you to ask questions to me, whether it's sports or life. And we'll also hang out twice a month and just shoot the ish on it. So patreon.com/Nick Cattles. It's in the description on my page on the channel. You can check it out. Sign up $5 a month for exclusive content. All right, back to the task at hand, talking Patriots free agency. Justin TF Patriot sends a super chat. I appreciate that, Justin. If you want your comment heard, if you want your question to be asked, jump to the front of the line by sending that super chat. Get Justin Simmons. Draft another outside corner, move Jones back to slot. A lot of options now. Yes, a lot of options, Justin, with all of these safeties. And I said this during the Kyle Duggar breaking news podcast the other night. I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't be against the Patriots bringing Duggar back and going out and getting a free-ranging safety, somebody like a Simmons. You can put Duggar in the box. You can play Simmons on the back end. You get more athletic. You get more ball hawking ability. Now, I think Simmons is going to end up in Philadelphia. He has a history with Vic Fangio. Obviously, the Eagles roster is much better than the Patriots roster. So I think Simmons eventually ends up in Philly. But would I be making that phone call if I were Eliot Wolf? Hell yeah, I would. You need a free safety, a legitimate, natural free safety, a guy who can make plays. And Simmons makes plays. I also agree on the cornerback point. Now, I think cornerback is a need for this team that gets overlooked. Jonathan Jones, better inside, a little long in the tooth. Alex Austin is an unknown. Jalen Mills is gone. J.C. Jackson is gone. Miles Bryant is, I think, too small to play on the outside. So a cornerback, to me, is a need that not a lot of people are talking about. It's the reason why that during my defensive offseason plan, I had the Patriots signing Stephon Gilmore. We talked about that, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Gilmore on a one-year deal, $8 to $10 million, makes a lot of sense to me. Gilmore and Gonzo. G squared at the cornerback position. So I think it is a need. I appreciate the super chat, Justin, as always. Means the world to me. All right, so the Patriots want to spend. We've covered that. Will they be able to execute? Because wanting to spend the money is half the battle. Will they be able to spend that money on who they want? And I think that's a fair and legitimate question to ask. Chad Graff wrote this in The Athletic the other day. The Patriots are finding out that some of the top free agents aren't particularly interested in joining their rebuild. They had planned on making a run at Mike Evans. But even before Evans agreed to a 2-year contract in Tampa, the receiver had no interest in coming to the Patriots. Graff then brings up Baker Mayfield. Says it doesn't appear that interest is or was mutual. Early indications. Mayfield plans to consider other options before the Patriots. And Graff wrote, to many within the team, their ample resources make the Patriots an appealing destination and a candidate for a quick rebuild. But already, 2 of the top free agents have signaled they don't want to come to New England. While locally, there's some optimism that the Pats can restock the shelves with some good finds in free agency and a good draft class, the sentiment expressed by multiple people at the Combine was more skeptical. So, they want to spend. They're making the phone calls. I think they're targeting the right people, the right kind of talent. But unfortunately, they're not getting a great reception back. We'd love to have you. And the response is, not so much. I'm going to look over there. I'm going to look over there. Now, I wonder, when I read that from Chad Graff, I wondered if that's partially why, if that's one of the reasons why Gerard Mayo backtracked on the whole burn some cash stuff, right? At the combine, he came out. He did a little bit of a Michael Jackson moonwalk on the burn some cash. And he took a step back from that. I wonder if that was because after some conversations, Mayo and Wolf realized, all right, yeah, we've got the money to spend and we want to spend it and we're targeting these guys, but these guys might not be in love with the idea of coming here. So maybe we need to temper expectations because it's going to be difficult for us to bring in these top names. Not because we don't want to, not because we don't want to spend the money, but because they don't want to. And I just want to talk about this for a second, because this is one of the things that drives me crazy when I listen to certain people in the media. And look, I've done radio for 10 plus years, worked at a number of places, 98.5, EEI, ESPN. You know, I've done the job, right? I am a media talking head. But one of the things that drives me crazy is at this time of year, people make a mistake to me. Not all people, but some people. They frame it as if the Patriots, if they don't sign a free agent, it's because they failed. It's because they weren't willing to pay. Now, in some instances, that's true. But we also have to look at this as a it takes two to tango kind of scenario. The Patriots could offer Mike Evans the world. If Evans wants to retire a Buccaneer, if Evans is comfortable with Baker Mayfield, if Evans loves the Florida weather, if Evans doesn't like the idea of having to pay Massachusetts taxes, the Patriots cannot do anything about those things. The only thing the Patriots can do is offer as much money as they can and try to sell the free agent on why they should come here. But you cannot control the situation. That's why they call it free agency. So this idea of the Patriots being incapable of landing this guy or that guy because they just didn't want to spend the money, that's not always the case. The other person has to say yes. Eliot Wolf can't walk into an office and put a gun to Mike Evans' agent's head and say, he's going to play for the Patriots or else. It's not realistic. It's not how it works. You can target people that you want, but sometimes things don't work for different reasons. In framing it as if they didn't land that guy just because they weren't willing to spend or they didn't pay enough or they didn't want to overpay. All of these things, to me, they tend to be lazy narratives. And I'm not a fan of those. It takes the free agent to say yes. You can give them the world, but they still might want to stay where they are. They still might want to join a contender. The Patriots are interested in Tyron Smith in Dallas. Well, he's going to be 34. He's played for Dallas. They can't get out of their own way in the postseason. If Smith says no to the Patriots because he wants to play for a contender, is that the fault of Eliot Wolf and Gerard Mayo? Is that because they didn't offer him enough money? Or is it because Smith has a couple of years left, maybe in the tank, and he wants to go to a team that on paper gives him a better chance to win? There are all sorts of reasons why free agents make decisions. All sorts of reasons. The other thing I thought of was that, okay, so if the Patriots, they went for Evans, they missed. They went might be too strong. They were interested in Mayfield. Not going to happen. And they're getting this, reaction from these free agents. And these guys are telling the Patriots, we're not really interested. Does that lead us to the Doug Kyed, Andrew Callahan article about the Patriots targeting at least one elite defensive player? Is it easier, quote unquote, for the Patriots to chase an elite defensive player versus an elite offensive player? Maybe, just maybe, Eliot Wolf and Gerard Mayo look at this and they say, damn, yeah, we want Calvin Ridley, but it's going to be very, very tough to sell Calvin Ridley given what we've heard from some of these other guys. And even though we want to go out there and get Ridley and we're willing to spend a bunch of money on Ridley, it's tough because we don't have a quarterback. We don't have starting tackles. LaMichael Petway is our only tight end on the roster. So maybe it's better for us in this specific scenario, in this specific offseason, maybe it's easier for us to go out and get a defensive player because you could sell. And again, I think Justin Simmons ends up with Philly, but you can sell Simmons on the idea of playing on this defense, right? It's much easier to sell Simmons on the defense than it is to sell Calvin Ridley on the offense, because your free agency pitch to Ridley is full of all sorts of obstacles. Simmons, not so much. Hey, Justin, you can come in. You work in the secondary. You're going to work with Mike Pellegrino, who's worked with defensive backs for a number of years. You're going to work with Brian Belichick, who's worked with safeties for a number of years. You're going to play alongside Christian Gonzalez, a young up-and-coming number one cornerback in the secondary. We're going to support you with guys like Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar, who are going to be able to go downhill and play that in-box safety role and smash people. All we need you to do, Justin, is go sideline to sideline and make some plays. Our head coach is Gerard Mayo. Top-of-the-line defensive player when he played in the league. He's been here for 5-6 years. Defense is his wheelhouse. We've got Matthew Judon at edge. We've got a young stud in Christian Barmore in the middle of that defensive line. We have up-and-coming Keon White that we can use. That's such an easier sell job than we don't know who's going to be quarterback. Not sure about tackle. Don't have a tight end worth the salt. But do you want to sign a contract and be our number one receiver? So you see the difference in the sell. So this offseason right now, the way it's working, it could be, and this could be why Doug Kyed and Andrew Callahan wrote what they wrote. It just could be much easier and much more realistic to add a defensive player that would be categorized as elite versus an offensive player, because the defensive player can see the vision. Offensive player has to take a lot of the word from Wolf and Mayo and believe that this system's going to be built the right way, and all of a sudden this offense can be dynamic. All right, more thoughts in a minute. Don't forget, like and subscribe. If you're watching, a lot of you are watching right now, we're busy. Give us that like. It takes a second of your time to click that thumbs up on the YouTube channel, and that means more eyeballs, more traffic. The more likes, more people get to watch this. More people get to have a conversation, of course, as well in the chat as we go along live here. So give us that thumbs up and subscribe. If you like what we do, you want to give us a shot, be that alternative voice here in Boston, sports media, subscribe to the channel, trying to hit 2,250 subscriptions. By next week, we're about 70 or 80 away. So subscribing would help us an awful lot. Rate and review as well, Spotify, Apple Pods. And again, the Patreon exclusive content launches on Monday. Going to have a special free agency podcast, ad-free on Monday night. Sign up, $5 a month. That's $1.25. If you drink beer, it's not even one beer on a Friday night for the full month of exclusive content, ad-free pods, mailbag, Q&A twice a week with all of you. Sign up right now, patreon.com/Nick Cattles, NICKCATTLES. When we talk about the Patriots having some issues in free agency and, swinging for big talent, but at least some of this big talent not responding the way the Patriots want them to respond, it reminds me of the offensive coordinator conversation, doesn't it? The offensive coordinator search. Oh, why couldn't they get Zach Robinson? Well, because if you look at the Atlanta Falcons, aside from the Raheem Morris relationship that exists with Zach Robinson, they've got Kyle Pitts. They've got Drake London. They've got Bijan Robinson. The talk right now is that the Falcons are going to go hard after Kirk Cousins. So that job is easier to sell Zach Robinson on because you know what the plan is. You know what you're trying to do and accomplish. You know a lot of the talent that is already on the roster and how you can utilize that talent. Alex Van Pelt right now is walking into a kitchen without many ingredients. So that's why people that wanted more detail, what's he going to tell you? How's your offense going to run? Well, first tell me who my quarterback is. Then tell me who my receivers are. Then give me a damn tight end I can work with. Who are my tackles? What do they do better in the run game? So it's very similar to the OC search. And that's why I didn't enjoy the lazy narratives about the OC search of like, oh, the Patriots didn't have a plan. They had a plan. It's very tough to execute the plan and get your top guy when you don't have what you need to sell that guy on. Nick Caley can look at the Rams and say, I'm going to go back to Sean McVay. I could easily be an NFL head coach within the next year or two by just going back. They're going to give me a pay bump. They're going to give me a title bump. And I'm going to work with an offense that I know. I'm going to work with guys that I know. I know Matthew Stafford's the quarterback. I know I've got Cooper Kupp and, Puka Nacua. So it's the same kind of feel and vibe. It's tough to sell. It's tough to sell anybody on a team that just won 4 freaking games in a depleted roster, which brings me to this. What was Bill Belichick's plan? Honestly, what was his plan? And I'm not trying to be smarky. I'm not trying to be a smart ass here. I've said I appreciate Belichick and the job that he did and the games that he won and the Super Bowls that he brought to New England. I consider him the greatest coach of all time. I've said all of that. But honestly, looking at this right now, if Belichick was here, what in the blue hell was his plan? Can you tell me what his plan was? You got a front office that is full of lame duck contracts. You have a ton of roster holes. You got a bunch of empty roster slots right now that you're looking at. What was Belichick's plan? Did he just expect that they were going to win more games and then run it back? Were they going to be a playoff team and then just go back to all of these free agents and bring back Hunter Henry and bring back others? Like, what was the plan? Calvin Anderson was on a short-term deal. Trent Brown had 1 year left. Onwenu was, we knew, walking into free agency. What was the plan? Because what's been left is a bleep show for Eliot Wolf and Gerard Mayo to try to climb out of. I mean, it really, really is. What was the plan? To walk into the offseason with 1/3 of your team, if not more, being free agents? Like, Belichick went into last season with no long-term offensive plan, with a quarterback that he didn't like. He literally walked in without a long-term offensive plan with supporting cast members and walked into that with a quarterback that he wanted to reportedly trade last offseason. What in the world was the freaking plan? And so that's another part of the conversation of, well, the Patriots were unable to sign this guy because they didn't have a plan or they didn't want to spend the money. We have to look at what they are dealing with. A lot of empty roster spots and a 4-win team. There was no sensible long-term plan. There was no, hey, if this doesn't work out, what can we pivot to? It's a mess. Which leads me to wonder, will we have more short-term deals this offseason? Is that the Patriots' way to deal with free agency? Try to swing at big talent like we've talked about. Take the swings at Evans, take the swings at Mayfield, take the swings at Saquon Barkley, take the swings at Calvin Ridley. Take those hacks. Take those home run hacks. But if you're not going to be able to sign those kinds of guys, I would not be surprised if Eliot Wolf and Gerard Mayo have a plan of, hey, let's give some bigger money deals on short-term contracts while we simultaneously draft and develop a younger wave of players. Because if you think of it that way, the Tyron Smith thing makes sense, right? The Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett stuff makes sense. The idea that the Patriots, that's been reported, if they draft a quarterback at 3, they might sit that quarterback for a year and make sure that quarterback is fully ready to step in and play, which I don't think is a bad idea. I know my buddy Zoe was ripping it yesterday and ripping Drake May. I don't think that's a bad idea. If you don't think the guy is ready, don't rush him in. If he's going to take a year, then let him take a year to develop. But maybe that's why we're seeing some of this stuff, right? The Patriots might say to themselves, let's load up on short-term deals, 2-year contracts, and let's absolutely crush the draft the next couple of years and start to develop those younger guys. Because we don't think we're going to be able to spend a ton of money on these free agents long-term wise, because we just don't have enough to sell them on. Don't forget, thumbs up, subscribe, means the world. Rate and review, Spotify, Apple Pods, Super Chat. Rob D jumps in. F it. Keep Mac, draft a left tackle and receiver and start over. Rob D's had enough. Keep Mac. Screw this thing. Draft a left tackle, draft a receiver, start all over. The Mac Jones stuff, not going to spend a lot of time on this because we've spent enough time on Mac. I just don't think it's the right situation for him. You read that some of the staff is not necessarily sold. There were questions about, his ability to connect with some guys in the locker room. There's been a lot of bad, a lot of the fans can't stand Mac. They want him out. I just think it's a really rough situation to throw them into. Really rough. Roll Pat says, Colin Cowherd is for keeping Mac Jones in New England. That means I'm not for keeping Mac Jones in New England. Whatever Colin Cowherd's opinion is on the Patriots, I'll take the opposite. Like 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10, I'll just take the opposite. Drew F says, I think Adam Peters drafts Drake May second. He could. He absolutely could. A lot of conversation about May and Daniels and who's going to go before the other one. It seems right now, as far as what people are saying, which again, take it with a grain of salt, it's smokescreen season, but a lot of people are making it sound like Jaden Daniels has jumped Drake May. I've seen some people over the last week or so start to really drop Drake May. Beyond like 5 or 6 in the draft. The Chris Sims stuff. Everybody's talking about the Chris Sims stuff. Yeah. Maybe Sims ends up being right. I know Sims had Zach Wilson as his number 1 quarterback in the draft back in 21, so he's not always right. Josh Gemini, Super Chat. Again, if you want to jump to the front of the line with your comment, your question, you can send a Super Chat our way. Also helps us financially. You contribute to the show by sending a little bit of moolah. Bill's dream probably was to win a Super Bowl like Parcells did in 91 with a backup quarterback and a great defense. Could be. I think it's rather obvious that Belichick thought the team was better than it was. That's obvious. The plan was not to walk in and win 4 games. But it's just so weird because when you look at this offseason and trying to sign these big-name free agents, trying to go out and get a Calvin Ridley or a Mike Evans or even a Baker Mayfield or Saquon Barkley, you're swinging big, but, the cupboard is bare. There just isn't anything there. How many teams walk into an offseason without a number 1 wide receiver, without their starting tackles, without a number 1 tight end, and without a number 1 quarterback? How many freaking teams? I do the research, but it might take me like 7 days to do it. How many teams have walked into an offseason with this scenario offensively? No quarterback, no wide receiver 1, no tight end 1, no starting tackles. And we're trying to sit there and indict Eliot Wolf and Gerard Mayo about, they didn't have a plan? What'd you expect them to just come out and hit home run after home run? And maybe they will. Maybe they will. All right, I have another thought on Mike Onwenu, and I want to get to this. I want to make sure I get to this so I'm on the record. I have an evolving opinion on Mike Onwenu's status. And I have an evolving opinion because of some of the things I've read and some of the things I've heard over the past couple of days. See, I don't believe that when you have an opinion, you have to stand on that opinion for the next 10 years. I believe that you can have an opinion and that opinion evolves when you have more information. I'll give you an example. I was okay signing Juju Smith-Schuster instead of Jacoby Myers last offseason. That was before we learned that Juju's knee was finished. If I knew it was one-legged Juju, I would have 100% stood on the mountaintop and screamed, keep Jacoby Myers over that guy. As we learn more information, you are allowed to evolve your opinion. So Mike Giardi was on NBC Sports the other night, right? NBC Sports Boston the other night. And Giardi said on Early Edition that he knows that Mike Onwenu wants to play guard. He wants to play guard. He doesn't want to play tackle. And to me, that changes the math. And I'll tell you why. The tag is about $21 million. If Onwenu wants to play guard, I'm not comfortable giving him $21 million on the franchise tag. Because what that does is it holds you up. If you dump $21 million on a right guard, we just talked about it, with all the other holes you have offensively, you dump $21 million on a guard, that's bad business. See, I came into this idea of the offseason and keeping Onwenu believing that he would be okay playing tackle, because tackle is much more valuable than guard. It doesn't mean I don't want Big Mike back, which I'll get into. But if he wants to play guard, I'm not paying that guy $20 million a year to play guard. Not when I need all the things that I need. I think that would be an absurd idea, frankly. It is easier to replace a guard than a tackle. That's been proven throughout the history of football. It's much easier to go out there and get a guard, even if that guard's going to cost you more money this offseason than that guard would have cost you last offseason or 2 off seasons ago. It's still much more difficult to replace a tackle than a guard. And we see that right now with the Patriots situation. I mean, we're even discussing, Trent Brown. Some people have said, well, they might be stuck bringing Trent Brown back. Now, most people say that's not going to happen. And I'm one of those people. Thanks, but no thanks. But the reason why that is even a conversation is because tackle is so damn tough to find. And the tackle position is even more difficult to fill nowadays because in college, schemes have changed. They're not teaching these guys how to pass protect for long periods of time. It's get the football out quickly. So when your defensive pass rushers at the NFL level are faster and they're getting to the quarterback quicker and they're stronger, tackles are having an issue dealing with the speed and the power of NFL defensive edge players because the job in college is let's try to spread it out and get the football out of the hands of the quarterback. So offensive line play across the league has declined. And so if you're looking at guard versus tackle, tackle wins every day of the week, twice on Sunday. See what I did there? So if Mike Onwenu wants to play guard, sorry, Mike, I'm not paying you $18, $19, $20 million a year to play guard. Not into it. I'm especially not into it when if there's one position offensively where the Patriots have depth, it's interior offensive line. I'm not telling you it's great depth. I'm just telling you there's depth. I mean, we know what happened last draft, right? This is a team that spent 3 or 4 draft picks on interior offensive linemen last April. So if there's one position that you have bodies, it's guard. Cole Strange, hopefully, fingers crossed, he gets back to start the season. Sounds like he might miss some of camp. But you invested a first-round pick in Cole Strange. You invested picks last year in Antonio Mafi, James Andrews, Sidney So. And now you're going to spend $20 million on Mike Onwenu to play guard? A first-round pick, multiple other picks, and $20 million a year for the guard position. That's insane. So if Onwenu if he is stuck on this, and he says, I don't want to play tackle. I am a guard. I want to play guard. That's where I'm comfortable. If that's the way he's approaching this, then I understand the Patriots not jumping to tag the guy. I understand the Patriots not leaping at the chance of spending, $18 million, $19 million a year on a guard when you've invested all of those resources the past 2 or 3 seasons on the guard position. You're not in that situation. You don't have the right circumstances. This is not Joe Tooney. You have so many other offensive things you've got to address. That dumping $20 million on a right guard it'd be irresponsible to a point. Evan Lazar has also brought up that, Onwenu might not be the best fit in the Alex Van Pelt offense, which is another question. But if he doesn't want to play tackle, it takes away the versatility and it takes away the value of giving him that kind of top tier money. I want Big Mike back. But if he's going to be back as a guard, I'll pay him $13, $14 million. Maybe 15 because he's my own guy. We've drafted him. We've developed him, and it would set a great example. $15 million a year for Big Mike to play guard. I'd be in that conversation. 18, 19, 20 million a year to play guard. I'm out. I'm not paying 18 million, 19 million unless I know he's at least willing to entertain the idea of playing tackle. So that's my evolving opinion. My evolving opinion on Onwenu. The Grizz, 15. Thanks for the super chat, Grizz. I think, quote, not talking about Mac, unquote, when him staying here is picking up steam is lazy. Can't ignore the positive, but only use the negative articles only. What's the positive, Grizz? Grizz, I don't know if you're like part of Mac Jones's family, man. Like I defended Mac Jones through the Colts game. But every comment on this podcast that you send is about Mac Jones and wanting to keep Mac Jones. What's the positive of keeping Mac Jones? Honestly, enlighten me. If you have a positive of keeping Mac Jones on this team, let me know what it is. He was awful last year. His confidence was shook. He doesn't have top-end traits. We already know he's a quarterback that needs a lot around him to succeed. We've known that since he was drafted from Alabama. He needs dynamic playmakers around him. He needs a really good offensive line. I'm willing to give you the positive. I honestly can't come up with much positive. What is it? He doesn't know the offense. This is going to be an all-new offense. He didn't show great leadership necessarily. So have you read positive articles in the last few months? If you have, honestly, share them with me. I'm not trying to be a smartass. Share them with me. What are the positives? Money. That would be the positive. The positive would be money. Because he'd make around $3 million. And then you could spend money on other positions and you could draft another position at number 3 and all of that. But if Mac stinks again, what's that accomplish? You're willing to not take a quarterback. And again, the premise is you take a quarterback at 3 because you think that guy can be a franchise quarterback. You're willing to not take a quarterback at number 3 because of Mac Jones. Look, if that's your opinion, cool. Everybody has opinions. But I vehemently disagree with that opinion. There's no way on God's green earth that I am walking into 2024 with Mac Jones as my quarterback plan. No way. No how. Nope. Not doing it. No chance. So again, I stress. Give me the positive. Other than money. Other than not having to spend the 3rd pick on a quarterback. Give me the positive of keeping Mac Jones here in New England. He was dog crap on the field. He didn't get along with everybody off the field. You want to take a reclamation project and have that be your plan? Like the negative articles only. Again, if I see a positive article on Mac Jones, I will share it with you. But what did you see last year that would make you believe? I don't see it. I just don't see it. Shooter McGavin being optimistic. We're going to suck next year. So there's that. Where Are My Entertainers says Mac was the worst quarterback in the NFL last year. That's your plan? I wouldn't. I don't see it. Doesn't make sense to me. The Grizz said Mac sucked because the team around him sucked as well. Mayor Daniels aren't fixing it, nor is a veteran quarterback. That's your opinion. That's your opinion. Again, I was a Mac guy, but Mac was terrible last year. And we haven't even gotten into the contract situation, Grizz. The idea that, he has a 50-year option you got to pick up by May. You're not likely going to pick up that option because no way you're going to say yes to guaranteeing paying that guy $20+ million in 2025 after last season. Now you're hamstrung by his contract. It doesn't, in my humble opinion, it makes 0.0 sense to bank on Mac Jones. And by the way, Mac Jones needs the team to be really good around him. So your point actually makes other people's points. The reason why you go after Mayor Daniels is because they can play off of platform. Things don't have to be perfect for them. They don't need 2 or 3 really good wide receivers because they have elite traits. You're making me sound like a Mac hater. I'm not. They have elite traits. That's the difference. You don't need as good of a football team around those guys if you love them, if you believe they're franchise quarterbacks. That's the point. Peter Jacoby says, I think we just went from cheapo Bill GM to cheapo Green Bay style GM. Look, maybe, but there's no evidence of it. There's absolutely zero evidence of that. Other than people just yelling things into the ether and people, sticking with their narratives because they want to stick with their narratives. We have no idea what they're going to do. And we've just spent the better part of this podcast talking about how they're targeting top guys. If you're going to be cheap, you're not targeting L'Jarius Sneed. You're not making the phone call. You're not making the phone call to Mike Evans. You're not making the phone call to Baker Mayfield. You're not making the phone call to Saquon Barkley. You're not reportedly wanting desperately to add a number 1 receiver before they got tagged like Michael Pittman. So what's been reported so far tells us that they're not going to go cheapo. Kiden Callahan saying they want an elite defensive player that would start immediately. And let's not forget, Eliot Wolf was not making the call in Green Bay. He was not in charge of free agency. He was the number 2 guy. All right, don't forget to give us that thumbs up if you're watching. Very busy day today on the podcast. Fantastic numbers, and I thank all of you supporting this show, giving us those thumbs up on YouTube and, of course, Facebook, Twitter/X, and subscribing. That's how these numbers build. That's how we create this community of a good back and forth like the Grizz. I disagree with the Grizz vehemently, but I'll take his point, and we'll talk about it, and I'll tell him why I disagree. But give us that thumbs up. Subscribe. Trying to hit 2,250 subscriptions by next week during free agency. We're about 70 to 80 away, so please subscribe to the channel. Takes a second of your time to also like the program. And rate and review if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Pods. Carlos Almonte comes in with more talk. I didn't want to talk about Mac Jones as much, but people are sending super chats. I got to respect and appreciate the super chats. They're helping me financially. So in Mac's defense, Jaden also had a great help around him. Only difference I see Mac will help us on a natty. Jaden didn't. Well, Carlos, again, here's the thing. Jaden Daniels is a different athlete than Mac Jones. He is a different specimen than Mac Jones. There's no denying that Jaden Daniels had top talent at LSU, right? No denying that. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, he had elite talent. But so did Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow ended up being a stud, a franchise quarterback, and he had a ridiculous abundance of riches helping him. But the difference between Daniels and Mac is that Daniels can beat you more than one way. If you believe that Daniels is the answer as a QB1, as a franchise guy, it's because he can play off platform. He can create with his legs. He's a completely different style quarterback than Mac. And I tweeted this the other day. I find it interesting. A lot of people are docking, quote unquote, Jaden Daniels for the talent that he played with in LSU. I don't see a lot of people docking Michael Penix. It's interesting. Michael Penix had Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk. He arguably had overall a better receiving core than Daniels had. But Mac He needs those kinds of weapons because of his own limited skill set. Daniels, arguably, the debate is that he doesn't. Like, comment, subscribe. A Patreon starting Monday. Going to do an ad-free NFL free agency podcast on Monday night, exclusive to Patreon members. Patreon.com/Nick Cattles. Patreon.com/Nick Cattles. Louise, all right, this is the last one. This is the last super chat. I appreciate you and love the interaction back and forth, you contributing to the show. Again, it means the world to me. Keeping Mac would be worst case scenario, even for him. May played good having Tez as his best receiver. Cheers from Brazil. My guy, Louise. Love the pod, Nick. Yeah. I mean, look, Tez Walker was Drake May's best wide receiver last year. Even he was very inconsistent. North Carolina receivers dropped a ton of passes. I tweeted out a video going back a couple of weeks ago where May was facing a ton of pressure and he was throwing these dimes, like dime after dime after dime after dime. And there were so many dropped passes by his receivers. Like if you go back to 2022 when Drake May had better talent around him and he had a different offensive system that he was more comfortable with, he was arguably a top 2 quarterback in the country last year. And that was with Caleb Williams, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. So you go back to 2022 Drake May with better weapons and an offensive system that fits him a little bit better. He was lights out in 2022. And he was only 20 years old. And the same thing with May. If you say, oh, May versus Mac. So May needs weapons. Again, May has elite traits. Mac does not have a single elite physical trait. Never has, never will. Drake May has a cannon for an arm. He has crazy athleticism for his frame. So they're just different quarterbacks. All right, I got to run. Appreciate you. If something big breaks later today, I'm sure we'll have a breaking news podcast. Don't forget, like and subscribe. The Patreon page, exclusive content, ad-free podcasts, mailbag. Also, twice a month, a Q&A. We'll have some fun. We'll talk life. Patreon.com/Nick Cattles, $5 a month, $1.25 a week. Patreon.com/Nick Cattles. Enjoy your Thursday. This has been the Nick Cattles Show. We're back